And I think what was really important to us was not to get emotionally attached to something that we liked and then find out that customers didn't like it too late.
Yeah.
So that's why we wanted to bring in testing very, very early on.
Hello and welcome to Brand Tuned, a podcast for people like you, entrepreneurs, marketers, designers, and business advisors wanting a better understanding of how to design a business and brand. Building a brand that's differentiated and distinctive needs to use intellectual property as an early consideration, a first one, in fact. Brand Tuned is hosted by me, Shireen Smith, brand lawyer, author, and marketer. I'd be eternally grateful if you would please subscribe on whichever channel you're on right now. Hello, I'm Shireen Smith from the Brand Tuned podcast, and I've invited Tom Gardner to discuss his branding experiences with me. So, Tom, hello. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, certainly. So Tom Gardner, I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur. I've developed and built about 7 different brands and had a wide variety of experiences. So yeah, I think the most recent branding experience was last month. So it's an ongoing project.
Okay, well, take me back to the very first experience you had. What caused you to get branding done? Because a lot of businesses just um, don't bother with it. They choose a name, they might get a logo done very cheaply. They don't really go through a branding process. So what made you actually decide, when was it that you first chose to have a branding experience?
Sure. So our first startup, we raised capital as seed funding and launched a tech business in the automotive space.
Okay,
So that was a B2C brand, an online platform to buy new cars.
okay.
And having raised capital, we knew we had to take it seriously.
Hmm.
And we had a bit of a joint approach. We started off with a really good consultant who took a lot more of a scientific approach to branding, which we really liked. He was very practical around trying to understand what you're building a business around, what are your customers looking for, who are you competing with in the industry.
Hmm.
And what we were two engineers and an accountant, so we were quite analytical. And what we did quite early on was we went and tested a bunch of brand ideas with some potential customers.
Hmm.
And our fifth favorite was actually voted as the best. So I think that was a very telling process where, we didn't just have one bright idea and got emotionally attached to it and ran with it. We actually took a bit more of a boring mathematical approach, which worked out really well in the end.
So your
And then
fifth
that,
idea for what, a client type or
no, the name of the brand.
oh, the name. Okay, so you
Yeah.
actually
So,
tested the name by asking what people thought of it.
yeah. So
What
our
was the name?
consultant
As a matter
generated
of interest.
sorry, say that again.
What was the name?
Carter. So
Carter. H-A.
Carter,
Carter.
Carter.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, we were looking for a 2-syllable name that had the word car in it. And we really liked the feminine Carly, but that was taken by Carly Rae Jepsen. So we wouldn't have been able to compete on SEO. But we had a bunch of other really interesting and fun names that we really liked. But it was really important to us to get the voice of the customer in at that stage. Um, and I think what was really important to us was not to get emotionally attached to something that we liked and then find out that customers didn't like it too late.
Yeah.
So that's why we wanted to bring in testing very, very early on. And shortly after that, with the same company, the same brand, we engaged with a branding agency to do a big branding campaign with us.
Mm.
And this was before we really built out our brand essence, our brand positioning statement, all of those really good hygiene factors. And that was a very different experience, and it didn't end very well at all. That
So can
agency
you
took one of,
let's go back first to what you had done for you, apart from the name with your first branding.
certainly. Yes. So
What did you get?
we just So what happened with the first consultant was a freelance consultant. He generated a bunch of name options for us, but at the same time built out some logo and contextual ideas of how the name would be used in context, which was really important
Mm,
because a list of words on a page versus how you capture them in a logo and a brand feel is very different.
mm.
So it was a really great opportunity for us to play with different ideas, rather be presented with one idea and say, this is what I think you should be doing. So we ended up with colors, a brand logo, business cards, a brand guide, but it was very basic because at that stage we really just needed a logo and a color scheme to start building the app and start moving forward. We hadn't yet thought of or crossed the bridge of doing brand awareness campaigns and big branding campaigns. Um,
Okay.
and
Can I
that's where.
find out why you actually started that business? Did you have any experience as a business owner before that?
So myself and our two other founders had come out of another startup that wasn't our own.
Mm.
So that was a B2C insurance company that sold life insurance, and we had helped grow that business. And through that, we felt, we had learned a lot about running a business, growing a business, raising capital, and we wanted to start our own business and found our own company.
Okay. So you found this. Did you not sort of discuss what your positioning should be, how you would differentiate Carter, or as part of getting the logo designed for you?
So we knew that we were trying to make it the whole process a lot more customer centric and more user friendly because buying a car is very obscure and there's a lot of stakeholders at play. It's a really terrible customer journey. And the three of us as founders had recently been through the car buying process for different reasons and had different pain points. So we knew that it wanted to be approachable. That's why we liked the idea of having a name for it, an actual human name. That was one of the options that we were very emotionally attached to. And I think subsequent to that, when we brought on a marketing manager later on, and then we started to really flesh out brand essence and personas and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So I think we got lucky early on that our freelance branding consultant really took the time to listen to us and understand what we were trying to build and try to capture that in the brand. But it
What
was
made
also
you
help.
choose that actual consultant? How did you come across them?
It was a friend of a friend.
What, so you just asked around who can help us
Yeah.
with our branding?
Yeah.
Mm,
And he had done, we saw his portfolio of work and it was pretty pragmatic. I think he wasn't building brands to try and win awards. He was trying to build brands that fitted the brand purpose, which we felt was very important for us.
mhm,
But at that stage, a lot of it came down to price.
mhm.
Like we didn't have the time or the money to shop around and talk to big established agencies.
Right,
We needed to do the best that we could with what we had.
right. And did he get the trademark searches done for you? Did you even know about the need for trademarks?
Yeah, we did go through that process and we separately met with a lawyer on that
Oh, so
because
that was so. Mhm,
we were conscious of that, but we met with a separate IP lawyer independently of that. But we did a lot of searching online around URLs and international businesses and that kind of thing. But I think it was less around conflicts of trademarks and a lot more around SEO and web presence.
mhm. But so you'd already chosen the name Carter when you went to a lawyer, or did you
We had
know
already chosen the name Carter.
you'd already chose? Well, that was lucky for you that it was available for.
It was very lucky, yes.
Right. Okay, so you went with that for how long before you had another branding person involved?
We've probably been operating and building the business for about 6 to 12 months. Then we raised more capital, and then it was time to think about a proper brand campaign to really get the brand out there.
Hmm.
And we wanted more than what our freelance friend could deliver us.
Hmm.
And another friend of ours had used a brand agency to do a big rebranding of their B2B printing business. And he couldn't speak more highly of this consulting company and the work that they had done. So I took that personal referral. We actually shopped around. We got pitches from 3 different brand agencies.
Hmm.
Um, and the process was quite amazing. Amazing for maybe a lot of the wrong reasons. The amount of work that the agencies invested in the project before they even met with us
Yeah, it's
was
amazing, isn't it?
it was scary
Yeah.
because you feel so emotionally backed into a corner to
Mm.
disagree with what they've done or to give them feedback on what they've done because you've seen how much they've invested in it.
Yeah.
And instead of pitching options, they pitch one idea. And it's like, this is the idea. We've brainstormed this for weeks, and this is the campaign, and these are the colors. And that's not how we operated. It's not how we thought. So we felt it a very difficult emotional journey because it was very emotionally charged. It was very dramatic. It was very creative, but it lacked that pragmatism and practicality in the process. And we felt very backed into a corner a lot of the time,
Mm.
um, which is not how
They
we
were
like
all
doing business.
changing your colors. I mean, did you not think you've already got colors? Why were you changing them?
Yes, and I think that's where a lot of it a big position change was trying to break the mold. And
Mm.
I think that's one of the challenges that you're often faced in a business is, are you trying to fit in and look safe like everyone else in the industry, especially when someone's buying a car from you?
Mm.
Or are you trying to look like a distinctive disruptor who's trying to shake things up?
Hmm.
That's a conscious choice.
Yeah.
Um, and for a lot of the agencies that we saw, they wanted to win awards with these amazing, creative, disruptive campaigns. But that's not what the business strategy was.
Mm.
Um, and I think for different clients with different needs, sometimes that's good enough. If you've got a profitable business and you're looking for some renewed energy and you've been around for 30 years, go for it. But
Yeah.
when there's a lot at stake and you're a young startup, we wanted to be a little bit more thoughtful and rigorous around how we made those calls and at least explore options and diverge
Mm.
before landing on this is the video, you know?
Yeah. So how did you choose then between the options?
We didn't. We scrapped all of
Mm.
them.
Oh, right.
We decided not to outsource it and we hired our own marketing manager to run it for us.
Okay. So did you continue using the colors you'd started with, or did you
Yeah.
change them?
We we kept the core brand essence, and we ran a very well-structured internal brand strategy process that was led by our marketing manager.
Uh-huh.
Um, so she was also very scientific and came with that kind of, I think a lot of the marketing world has moved towards a lot more, digital A/B testing and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And we found someone who thought that way. So we ran a much more, we tested a lot of things with digital marketing to see what resonated with the market because you can do that with thousands of people every day
Mm.
and then build out a campaign out of that to see what's resonating and make sure that that brand campaign will actually work.
Mm.
So we really liked that approach because it was a bit more proven and it might have been a bit slower and it may not have been as creative. But I think we knew that we were spending money on something that would resonate with the market.
How did you know um, to get funding for your business? Did you get help from people to sort of create the business plan and such like so that you would be able to get funding?
So our backgrounds, we all started, myself and my 2 business partners started working together at McKinsey and Company, the big international strategy business.
Oh,
So we did a lot of work with a lot of different businesses. And then when we joined and helped scale the first startup that wasn't our startup, we
yeah,
got exposure to a lot of capital raising processes and debt raising processes through that.
right,
So I think that's why the second time round we felt a lot more empowered because we had paid our school fees
right.
using someone else's money, so to
Mm.
speak.
Okay, so what happened to that business then?
It's done extremely well. We eventually had to pivot and start buying dealerships because we realized that car dealerships were run so traditionally poorly that you actually had to buy a dealership and change how the dealership worked.
Uh-huh.
So we've bought, I think it's 10 to 12 different dealerships now, all under the Carter Holding banner as a brand.
Mhm.
Um, and they've been totally overhauled, and sure, they're constantly winning Dealer of the Year because of good customer service and the digital presence and leveraging a lot of digital, capabilities
Mm.
to give your customers a great experience. So
So
the
have you
business has done very,
sold
very
that
well.
business? Have you
So
sold?
I left that business in 2019 because I immigrated to Australia.
Mm.
But I'm still in touch with the management team and the founders of that business,
Mm.
and they're doing very, very well.
Right. So then you went on to your second business. Mm.
Yes, so Carter was our first startup. Second startup was a tech startup in the legal tech space.
Oh, right.
Um, I went back to our original
Mhm.
brand consultant,
Yeah.
went through a very similar process around names, contexts. It was quite a different experience because it was B2B. And I think depending on your route to market and who needs to buy into your route to market strategy, it really changes how much you really need to worry about your brand,
Mm.
um, and how much your brand actually has to say what you do. I think in B2C, there's such a proliferation of brands. Sometimes you want your brand to actually explain what you sell, whereas in B2B, a lot of it is relationship driven. So you get the opportunity to explain what you do. People aren't finding you on Google. So that was a very different experience, and we didn't have to be as cautious and A/B test as much. But we did look at competitors. We did get a feel for what was in the industry and be very thoughtful about where we wanted to position ourselves.
So
Because
what
it
were
was
you offering
legal.
in the legal space? It's one I understand very well. So,
So it's case and matter management.
right.
So
To
yeah.
support.
So
Mhm.
yeah. So backbone system, we integrate very closely with document management systems to do process automation, matter tracking, dashboarding, all of those, resource planning, all of that around your matter traffic.
And who buys
Uh,
for you? It's mainly law firms, presumably.
Law firms and large global corporates. So we serve in-house legal teams as well as law firms.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
did you rebrand that at all, or did you stay with the?
no, we set the brand up from scratch and we've stuck with the brand. It's worked really well.
Mhm.
I think there's been iterations and updates to the sort of look and feel of the website, and moving from black backgrounds to white backgrounds as the trends on the internet change. But the core logo and symbolism has remained the same.
And what's that called?
Co-Flow.
Pardon?
Co-Flow. Co-Flo.
Co-Flow. Okay. And
Yeah.
did you work with a trademark person
Yes.
to
So
choose?
then very early on, we engaged with because we knew that was going to be a global multinational business. We worked being in the legal industry, a lot of lawyers.
Mm.
So we worked with one of the big law firms to do the IP search for us to register the trademarks across the US, the UK, all of the jurisdictions.
Okay.
Um, because yeah, we've got clients that are global clients.
Mm. Okay. And you chose a logo and color scheme and have more or less stayed with that. Uh, is
Yes.
that and a
Yeah.
positioning?
Yeah, and I think we went for I think with the B2B business, it's a pretty timeless design. It's relatively simple, very similar to Carter. We didn't overdo it with symbolism and that kind of thing. So I think part of the minimalism in the both of those
Mm.
logos and brand essences is a bit more of that timelessness to them. I think because of what we were setting up and being startups, we didn't want to break the mold and go very innovative.
Uh-huh.
But I think the other side of it, though, is if you're building a business around a brand, you also have to be thoughtful about how you change it, because customers may come and go, but you've also got to worry about the 500 people that you've hired, and they also need to get behind your brand and believe in your brand, and you need to believe in your brand.
Mm.
So that's where if I get finicky about the font in my brand, it's because I need to look at that font every single day for the next 10 years. I
Mm.
really want to like it, right? Because if there's something I don't, it's going to bother me for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other angle to branding and rebranding that's really important, is the impact that it has on staff who have a lot of vested interest in that brand and really resonate with it.
Well, often businesses don't really understand what a brand means, and but you already knew that through being from McKinsey, presumably, what actually was involved to, to create a brand and then to stay true to it throughout the business.
Yeah, and I think you also at some point have to do the best with what you've got. So our first company that I joined after they had branded. The way they had chosen the name was they were caught up between five different names,
Mhm.
and they wrote each one on a piece of paper, and they crumpled them in a ball and then threw them down a hallway, and whichever one went the furthest was the name that they picked.
Mhm.
That's not the brand origin story that you want to be telling new staff,
Mhm.
right? And that opportunity only comes around once to
Mhm.
say, this is why we set up this brand. This is why we called it this. So I think, again, the school fees that we learned from our first experience and saying, when we set up a brand from that first employee, we want that journey to be more meaningful to us and to the staff member. I think that was an opportunity that when you're growing a startup management team and a startup staff contingent, you want all of the help you can get to get people excited.
Yeah, but usually you identify something that's wrong in an industry that you are going to put right through the business that you're creating. So how did you know that there was a need for whatever you set up with case management, that there was a gap, if you like, or
Ah, right.
something wasn't being well addressed?
So my business partner and I were on the board of a technology consulting company that served lawyers and were implementing document management systems.
Hmm.
One of the global leading document management systems, and clients kept asking for help on the same periphery questions.
Hmm.
So we did a strategic review of that business in 2018, and this gap kept coming up. And we stepped back and we said, hang on, this is a product opportunity. We've looked because they were technology resellers. They went out globally. They looked for what products were out there, and there wasn't anything that was fit for purpose. And they were custom building the solution for each firm. So that's where we took the step to say, let's really start thinking about this as a product and think about whether we can develop this out as an offering. And that's when we carved it out as a separate business and started developing it as a standalone.
Oh,
And I think the benefit there was because we were already serving large corporates, we could prototype that solution in the biggest companies in the world. We didn't have to start with the mom and pop shop.
yeah.
So that helped us get product market fit very, very quickly,
Yeah.
which was quite unique. So yeah, that's how we knew that there was a gap, because our customers told us there was a gap. They were asking us to fill it.
Have you ever started a business where you didn't raise capital, where, you just used your own funds, or do you always raise capital?
So the Carter business, we started on our own funds, and we got that to a point where we had an application prototype and we had started engaging with car dealerships as partners, and we had pushed it. We had a timeline in mind that if we got that far, we would literally run out of money and we wouldn't be able to mortgage our homes any further.
Mm.
So we had wanted to get it as far as we could so that we could actually show something to shareholders or potential shareholders. And luckily, all of that worked out really well and worked out according to time.
So you got the branding anyway before you'd raised
Yeah,
funds. I see.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because we needed to go out to market and start testing things
Yeah.
and building the application and building the brand, the front end of the application. So all of that was front loaded. But that's why we didn't go for a big agency out of the gates, because we couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, we were quite lucky.
Yeah. So what other experiences have you had of branding then?
So November, we set up another business for my wife. She's just finished her postgraduate studies in immigration law and will be looking to set up an immigration business.
Okay.
So we worked with a brand consultant on that, which was very exciting and very interesting. It was her first time going through the process. Obviously, I've been doing it a couple of times now. And that was, again, really being thoughtful about testing the market. We came up with a bunch of ideas that she liked, some ideas she didn't like, but we said, look, let's not get emotionally attached. Let's go run surveys. Let's see what people vote on and what feedback they give us. So by the time we engaged with our brand consultant, we could give her all of that thinking and take her along the journey to say, this is kind of the angle and what we're feeling, just so that you know where we're coming at this with. And we're open to be taken away from that.
Mm.
But let's not have this awkward situation when you're in love with something and we're in love with something else, and then we're talking past one another. So we wanted to really give
Are
the
you
full
talking
download.
about the name now when you're talking about?
Everything, the name, the feel, the colors, the symbolism, all of that. And also the imagery. So one of the big things that we needed to align on was the color scheme. And our brand consultant really liked a warm color scheme. But all of the photographs of Australia are of the Sydney Opera House, which has a lot of blues in it. So if you've got a warm logo with a blue picture, it really clashes. So
Mhm.
it was those practical uses of the logo that we really had to think about.
So
Um,
is a brand for you primarily the name and design, rather than what the business is going to be all about and stand for? And I mean, for example, what
so
does your wife believe? What does she think is wrong in the immigration industry that she wants to put right? So,
Yeah, so that space is partially there's a gap because it's underserved. The agents are currently overwhelmed with the growing number of immigrants, and the barriers to entry are very high. To become an agent is very difficult, and to pass the exam is very difficult. So I think part of it is and I think part of the opportunity is having me on board because I've built businesses and I know how to run at scale. And a lot of immigration agents, like property agents, like a lot of that, they're used to running their own thing with their own notebook and not building big scalable businesses around that.
mhm,
So the opportunity isn't really a positioning one. It's more around word of mouth customer service because that's really how that industry operates. A lot of it is around your personal brand presence and being a trusted person in the industry and having a trusted presence online.
mhm,
So yeah, we took a lot of that into account, and one of the big trade-offs we had to make, which around brand essence, was did we try and come across as a professional services business and feel like a law firm or feel like a business like that? Or did we come across as something that's approachable and softer with a softer name and not so much Gardner and Sons or Gardner and Partners kind of professional services essence? We tested those names very early on to see what resonated with customers, with potential customers, with people who are going through the immigration process.
mhm.
And they guided us on what kind of brand essence they wanted to engage with.
So it's heavily regulated, isn't it? Immigration.
Yes,
So you have to be a regulated law firm to do it,
you
presumably.
have to be a registered immigration agent.
All right. Okay. And this is
Yeah,
just in Australia.
Australia and New Zealand.
So you can't have world ambitions with something
No,
like.
unless you go and study the immigration law of Taiwan and write the board exam in Taiwan. But
Hmm.
yeah, but remember your market is global.
What you mean, people who might be interested in emigrating to.
So you typically would have a one or two target markets that you would focus on, and a lot of that is language and culture related. So there's agents who focus on Brazil and they focus on student visas from Brazilian students or farm workers from Brazil, as an example. Or there's agents that focus on the United Kingdom for people who want to come to Australia from the United Kingdom.
Hmm.
So
So how do you actually ask people for their opinions? Because I would have thought, unless you've got a substantial number of people to ask, it's just very subjective what
it
names.
is definitely, and I think that's where it is extremely subjective. And I think when at a stage of a business where you don't have a lot of money to throw at it to do focus groups and scientific testing and,
Yeah.
statistically significant populations is just not at your grasp.
Hmm.
But you get very directionally when you ask 20 people and 18 of them vote for the same thing, like, and you use your logic and your own gut feel on it. But I think that for me is more important than not even asking a customer.
But
So I
often,
think
if you've got a really good name, it's possible somebody else might go and register it before you've even had a chance to do that. So that's one of the risks of putting it out
Yes.
there and asking for opinions on it.
Yeah, it is. And I think I haven't come across that. I haven't had that happen yet.
Hmm.
And to be fair, I think a lot of the good names have already been taken. It's amazing how many URLs have been registered that are just not available.
Mm.
One of the ones we were looking at was, I think, koala migration, and some random person has bought that and it links to a training business.
Uh-huh.
So that's happening anyway. I think people are gaming the system and getting creative and trying to park domains and business names already. So you've got to work within that.
Although you don't
Um,
really need a .com nowadays, there are so many other URLs you could choose. Or do
it's
you
true.
think it's important
Uh,
to have the .com?
For me personally, it was very important on the brand that I've just set up. I think it comes across with more established credibility if you've got the .com. So if possible, I think that's helpful. I think a lot of other companies are getting very creative, and that's fine. I think we have to move with the times. But
Yeah.
if I have a choice between a .com or a .global or a .org, or I'd go with a .com if it's available.
Yeah.
Um, and I was lucky that the brand that I've just set up does have the .com available, so that was helpful.
Mm. So what is your own business now that you're focused on?
So I'm busy winding down at Co-Flo, the legal tech business. They're busy growing rapidly in the European and the US markets. So me being in Australia is making me a bit disconnected from the business. So I'm stepping away as an executive and focusing on other business opportunities. I'm busy launching a business called the Management Distillery, which is an executive management training business and accelerator.
Uh-huh.
That's the brand that I've been setting up through November, December, and that really did start with a lot of soul searching around brand essence,
Mm.
um, because it's a very saturated market.
Mm.
There's a lot of training out there, and a lot of it is the same stuff under wrapped in a different brand.
Hmm.
So I think really being thoughtful about what it stood for, and I've as soon as I thought I landed on a concept and an idea, I'd sleep on it and then something else would come up. So I'm glad I didn't rush the process.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was around do you label yourself as an accelerator or as an academy or as a mini MBA? Because people know what those are, but the problem is that there's so many of them.
Yeah.
So eventually I got down to I was doing some work with an executive, and it was really about clarifying the essence behind what we were doing.
Hmm.
And that's where the concept of a distillery came from. And a lot of the symbolism around the brand that we're using is around essence and elements and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that worked out really well.
Yeah, it's a nice juxtaposition because you get the descriptive element in having management, but then adding distillery really takes it to a trademarkable level and
Yeah.
is quite distinctive. Mm.
Yeah. Problem is, it's a lot of syllables. So it is a hell of a thing to type out, but I think it's memorable, right? Everybody
Yeah.
loves a distillery.
Yeah. So has that been launched or are you still working on it?
I'm currently building the website as we speak. The book is with the editor, so it's a big project for 2024.
So you're writing a book of that name and offering potentially an
So
accelerator. Is it?
yeah, the book is called From Manager to Executive, which is really
Okay.
the intermediate manager gap that I'm filling with the training that I put together or the program that I put together. And then the medium is an accelerator where you've got, good online on-demand training and a structured program, but then you've got high-touch working sessions to really make it applicable and to really pass on knowledge and peer coaching.
So your target market are in-house people working within companies who want to move.
Yeah, so that's the target participant. I think the target market is learning and development managers and professional development managers.
Hmm.
So this would be more of a B2B offering. But I think for a lot of them, they want to know what you're delivering and they want to know why what you're delivering is going to solve their problem. And that's why I think having a very clear brand that angles towards distilling executive thinking rather than toolkits and how to run a one-on-one and those kinds of things that there's a lot of that on the internet. That's where I'm doubling down on the brand essence around that real executive thinking kind of space.
And what sort of help have you enlisted for that? I mean, how did
I've
you
used
choose who to work with?
Yeah, so the brand consultant that we used for the migration business got referred to from a friend. She's done a lot of branding work with a lot of famous brands,
Mhm,
and I've really liked the work that she's done.
mhm,
So I tested her out really with the migration business to see how she took feedback on board and, whether if that was a success, then I'd roll forward onto the management distillery. And
mhm,
that worked really well. And I think a big part of it was us just sitting down and having breakfast and just getting to know each other so that she could also understand my personality, how I thought about things, what was important to me from a personal values perspective. And then I think she appreciated that I had a background in building brands and how I tackled that in the past. And I wasn't looking for something that broke the mold. I had a very good idea of what the business needed to stand for. And I think that was really helpful for her to be a thought partner rather than trying to be a thought leader, which I think was really important.
So presumably you think that there's something wrong with the education that's currently available for people to move from manager to executive.
So again, I'm my own conversion story. So my third startup, we had built a new management team. I didn't want to run training again, so I went out and looked in the market to see what was out there. I reached out to all my friends all over the globe in my network. They were saying the same thing. They were sending their managers on training, and they were coming back saying that 10% of it was useful, and that there was this real gap around what happens once you've mastered the basics of management, and how do you close that gap between you and the boardroom or
Mhm.
you and the C-suite. And no one's answered that. So, and that's all the work that I've been doing with my teams and all the work that I did training people at McKinsey. So, time to not build that for my team, but build that for the world.
Great. Well, that's very interesting. Thank you very much, Tom. Is there anything else that you think I should have asked you that you'd like to mention?
Um, no, I think we covered.
Yeah.
That was a very comprehensive, walk down memory lane. So no, I think that was great.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you, Shireen.
Okay, then. Bye. That's it for this week. The one request I have of you is to subscribe on whatever channel you're listening on. Thank you and bye for now.